How many ICE detainees died? How many detainees, illegals died under Obama? Do you know the number, Lewis, since you're so factual and you have the history report? How many?
How many
57 died under Obama.
Yes, and you know what else? And you know what else I know, Vinny? You know what else I know?
Hey guys, welcome back to Lucas Speaks. It's your boy Lucas, and listen, I need you to pay close attention to this one because what you are about to see is a UK journalist who actually went to Minnesota, actually talked to the people, actually saw what ICE is doing with his own eyes, walk into a debate and dismantle a MAGA bootlicker so completely and so calmly that the only response the other guy could produce was screaming conspiracy theories at the top of his lungs on live television. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up because this is exactly the kind of accountability this channel exists for. Now let's get into it.
To be done. And if ICE don't do what they're doing, then how do you actually identify and remove people who are there in America illegally, and particularly the ones who commit heinous crimes?
Well, something has to be done, Piers. I would agree with you, and I would also agree that part of the reason this story is taking place is because political oxygen and space was created by the Biden administration. No doubt they lost control of the border, and no doubt politics of this on the left went too far. But no one voted in the United States, and I've not been watching it from afar because I've just come back from Minnesota reporting from there for the News Agents podcast. And I can tell you right now that no one there, including Republicans, voted for what we are seeing. What I saw in Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul, was the terrorization of ordinary Americans. Everybody there, particularly if you're black or brown, has a story. They have started in the last 50 days or so, taking out their passports with them, taking out their documentation with them. So scared are they about being accosted by ICE officers. Even legal American citizens are worried about being picked up and detained for however long, going to church, going to the supermarket, picking up their kids from school. No one in the United States, even Trump voters, voted for that. Much less did they vote for the killing of American citizens on American streets. And just to pick up what Vinny said, look, there is a reason that these people, many of these people, Rennie Good and Alex Pretty, completely model American citizens. No criminal record, simply people concerned about what is going on in the community. Why are they out observing, just observing, not interfering, observing what ICE is doing?
That's a lie.
No,
That's a lie.
let me finish, Vinny, let me finish.
You're lying.
Observing, no, I'm not.
You're lying.
I saw it for myself. Observing.
Renee Good was driving her car and barricading it.
Can you let me finish, sir?
Lewis,
Can you let me finish, sir?
Yeah, but you're lying.
Could you let me finish?
You're lying. Why was
Could you let me finish? Have you been in Minnesota recently? Have you been in Minneapolis? Have you watched it? Because I have,
no,
and I can tell you.
why the hell would I want to go to Minnesota?
Right, okay, because you believe what you want to believe. I'm telling you what I saw. I'm telling you what I saw for myself.
You think Renee Good?
I'm telling you what I saw for myself, my own eyes. People are observing, and why are they observing? So they're observing because they know that the federal government will lie about what ICE agents are doing. They have done that repeatedly. They do not wait, as any normal government would do, for an investigation. They do not wait for the facts to emerge. They do not wait to interview observers and people who were there. They simply decree almost instantly that anybody involved is a domestic terrorist. We have seen those lies about Alex Pretty exposed for what they are. He was not trying to massacre anyone, as the Department of Homeland Security claimed. He was observing because he knows that the federal government will lie. If these citizens don't come out and do what they do, they know there can be no justice. They know that these ICE agents will be able to act with impunity. And the proof of the pudding in that is what we have seen with Alex Pretty. If those observers were not there, then he would have been shot in the back as he was with his gun in his holster, and the federal government would have lied about it. We would have had to believe what they said. Instead, we were able to see, because of the peaceful observations of the people there, we were able to see the truth, which is this was a man who was shot in the back, who was posing no threat whatsoever to those ICE officers. And even the reason that they were there in the first place proved to be a lie. That is the ICE officers. Why did ICE say they were there? They said they were there. No, let me finish. They said that they were there to detain an illegal Ecuadorian who was an ardent criminal. What did it turn out? The Minnesota Department for Corrections made clear when they got the name of this person, his only violations, illegal, yes. Was he a violent criminal? No. He'd had a few traffic violations on his record. Alex Pretty died for a man who basically had sped and gone too fast in his car. I don't think his death killed in the streets by his own country's officers is worth that, do you?
But Lewis, all right, but before I go to Gillian, Lewis, but what would you do, right? You're in charge of Homeland Security in the United States. You know millions and millions of people have come in the last 4 years illegally. They're in America. All right, there's a lot of anger about that with a lot of Americans. You've just seen Donald Trump come in with a thumping win on a mandate of dealing with this. If you don't do it the way they're doing it, how do you get these people, identify them, bring them to justice, and deport them if they're committing crimes?
I would do two things, Piers. I would obey the law and I would pass immigration reform. If you obey the law, President Obama, Vinny's already said it for himself, President Obama was called the deporter-in-chief. He managed to deport millions of illegal citizens, illegals. He did that, and he didn't need to do that by employing what is basically a poorly trained paramilitary force operating with impunity, attacking citizens of the United States. And moreover, if you were to do what has long been necessary in America, which is comprehensive immigration reform, the bargain should have always been, the Democrats get what they want, which is a pathway to citizenship, particularly for children who have come over undocumented, but the Republicans get what they want, which is a bolstering of the border. That has been tantalizingly close multiple times. Normally, it's been Republicans, including now the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, when he was in the Senate, who walked away from it because they thought it was a good political issue for them to do. You do not need to deal with immigration by breaking the law.
Can I have 1 minute?
All right, very quickly, Vinny, and then Gillian.
How many ICE detainees died? How many detainees, illegals died under Obama? Do you know the number, Lewis, since you're so factual and you have the history report? How many? 57 died under Obama.
Yes, and you know what else? And you know what else I know, Vinny? You know what else I know? That there was a federal process.
Let me finish. You said the Biden administration lost control. This is your direct quote. They lost control of the border.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you are full of you-know-what. All right, it wasn't lost control. It was on purpose. They opened the border to flood the country to bring in their damn votes.
Well, how would they have been able to vote if they weren't citizens?
Excuse me,
all right.
Let me finish. When Texas, the governor put a freaking barbed wire, the White House sued him and sent trucks to lift it up to bring these illegals. Enough of your nonsense. And don't talk about churches. You're talking about they're scared in churches. Look what the hell happened recently with the churches where the two BLM people came in there and the report just came out that they were telling the kids.
You know what? It sounds like you're saying, Vinny, that Rennie Good and Alex Pretty had it coming, and it's disgusting.
So now that you have seen exactly what happened in that exchange, let us talk about what this debate actually revealed. Because what Louis Goodall just demonstrated was something that the mega media ecosystem is fundamentally incapable of producing. He went somewhere, he talked to people, he saw things with his own eyes, and then he came to a debate and reported what he found. That is called journalism, and it is the single most devastating weapon against the kind of performative rage politics that Vinny represents. Because you cannot scream your way out of eyewitness testimony from someone who was actually there. Let us start with what Lewis Goodall actually saw in Minnesota. Because this is the factual foundation that everything else in this debate rests on, and it deserves to be stated completely and clearly. He went to Minneapolis and St. Paul and reported that ordinary Americans, not illegal immigrants, not criminals, not the people ICE claims to be targeting, but ordinary Americans, black and brown citizens with every legal right to be exactly where they are, have started carrying their passports and documentation with them everywhere they go. To church, to the grocery store, to pick their children up from school. American citizens, people born in this country or naturalized through a legal process, carrying papers to prove their right to exist in their own neighborhoods because they are terrified of being detained by ICE officers who have demonstrated repeatedly that they are not particularly concerned with verifying legal status before making arrests. That is not a talking point. That is not media bias. That is what a journalist found when he went and looked. And Vinny's response to that firsthand reporting was to scream that Louis was lying, not to present counter-evidence, not to cite his own reporting from Minnesota, not to produce a single fact that contradicted anything Louis said, just to scream liar at a man who had just returned from the location being discussed. That tells you everything about the difference between these two approaches to political debate. Now let us talk about Alex Prey and Rennie Good, because these names need to be said, and these stories need to be told clearly and completely on every platform that claims to care about American justice. These were not people interfering with law enforcement. These were not criminals. These were not domestic terrorists, as the Department of Homeland Security immediately and without investigation labeled them. These were American citizens exercising the most fundamental democratic right available to them in a free society, the right to observe their government in action in a public space. They were there because they and their community had learned through painful repeated experience that when ICE operates without witnesses, the federal government will lie about what happened. And they were proven absolutely right. Alex Prey was shot in the back, with his gun in his holster, and posing no threat to the officers who shot him. And the initial justification given by ICE for why they were in that neighborhood in the first place, that they were there to detain a dangerous Ecuadorian criminal, turned out to be a lie. The Minnesota Department of Corrections confirmed the person in question had nothing but traffic violations on his record. Alex Prey died in the street, killed by the government of the country he was born in, over a man whose most serious offense was speeding. And the only reason we know any of this, the only reason the government's narrative collapsed, is because those observers were there. Because those American citizens decided that their community deserved witnesses. Because they understood that without documentation, without eyewitnesses, without footage, the federal government would write whatever story it wanted, and there would be no accountability whatsoever. They were right. And the Trump administration's response to being caught in that lie was not accountability. It was to label the observers domestic terrorists and double down. Now let us address Vinny's actual argument. To the extent that what he did constitutes an argument rather than a performance of anger designed to exhaust the conversation into submission. His central claim is that the Biden administration intentionally opened the border to flood the country with Democratic voters. This is a conspiracy theory, not a controversial political interpretation, not a debatable policy disagreement. A conspiracy theory, meaning a claim that requires you to believe in a secret, coordinated, intentional plan with no credible evidence supporting it and significant evidence contradicting it. The Biden administration's immigration record was extensively documented and extensively criticized, including by Democrats. It was a policy failure driven by inadequate resources, broken legislative infrastructure, and political miscalculation. It was not a secret plan to import voters, and the evidence for that is simple. Undocumented immigrants cannot vote in federal elections. The conspiracy requires you to believe the Biden administration risked the entire legal and political architecture of American democracy to import millions of people who were not eligible to vote. That does not make logical sense. It does not make evidentiary sense. It is the kind of claim that gets repeated loudly and often enough that it starts to feel like received wisdom in certain media ecosystems. But it collapses immediately upon contact with basic factual scrutiny. And then there is Lewis Goodall's most important point, the one that cuts through all of the noise and lands directly on the most fundamental question of this entire debate. He said you do not need to deal with immigration by breaking the law. That sentence deserves to be read and understood completely. The United States has immigration laws. Those laws include due process protections. They include judicial oversight. They include the right to a hearing before deportation. They include constitutional protections that apply to everyone on American soil regardless of documentation status. The Trump administration is not enforcing immigration law. It is breaking immigration law in the name of enforcing it. It is defying court orders. It is deporting people to countries they have never lived in. It is detaining American citizens without basis. It is shooting people in the back in their own communities. And it is labeling anyone who observes or documents or questions any of this a terrorist or a criminal or a globalist or whatever the insult of the day happens to be. Lewis Goodall correctly pointed out that Barack Obama deported more people than any president before him, and did it within the law, with due process, with judicial oversight, without a paramilitary force terrorizing legal residents in American cities. The choice is not between enforcing immigration law and not enforcing it. The choice is between enforcing it legally and enforcing it lawlessly. And this administration has chosen lawlessness and is dressing it up as strength. Here's what Lucas Speaks needs you to understand after watching this video. The rage that Vinny performed in that debate is not passion. It is not conviction. It is a strategy. When you do not have facts, when you cannot counter eyewitness testimony, when you cannot explain away dead American citizens and shot-in-the-back observers and Supreme Court defiance and photoshopped images repeated 7 times on national television, you scream, you interrupt, you accuse. You change the subject to BLM and churches and Obama's deportation numbers. You make the conversation so loud and so chaotic that the truth gets buried under the noise. It is a deliberate technique, and Lewis Goodall refused to let it work. He stayed calm. He stayed factual. He kept returning to what he saw with his own eyes. And that composure, that refusal to match the energy of someone performing outrage rather than making arguments, is exactly what accountability journalism looks like when it is done right. 3 American citizens are dead as a result of ICE operations. That is not a statistic. Those are 3 families that will never be whole again. 3 people who woke up one morning as American citizens and did not come home. And the people defending the system that killed them cannot answer basic questions, cannot counter eyewitness reporting, and cannot explain why obeying the law and respecting due process is somehow incompatible with border security. Because there is no honest answer to those questions that also defends what is happening. And Lucas Speaks will keep asking them. If you believe American citizens deserve to be treated like American citizens regardless of what they look like, hit that like button right now. Share this video because Lewis Goodall went to Minnesota and told the truth, and that truth needs to reach every corner of this country. Subscribe to Lucas Speaks and turn on your notifications. We are not backing down, and we are just getting started.